the next thing to know, and I'm not even going to bother teaching any chords here. There are plenty of videos about learning chords and where to put your fingers. I'm going to show you about strumming. I think strumming is very much not emphasized enough in teaching, and therefore you get a lot of bad strummers out there. And it's really the most important thing, it's particularly if you're going to be playing by yourself or a group or anything like that. Having a good strumming with a nice tone is very important. When you hold your pick, you can see that when you hold it up to the guitar, it's going to be turned at a slight angle from the string, so that you're striking it actually not with the tip of the pick, but the side of the tip, right where the pick starts curving at the end there. And the only time that you really attack the strings with the very end of the pick is when you're just plucking individual notes. When you're strumming, if you go in at the strings with the end of the pick, you're going to end up doing what's called digging, which is getting your pick way into the strings, and it makes it extremely hard to strum, and it makes your tone very harsh, and it's not a good way to go. So instead, you want to brush the strings very lightly, just as lightly as you possibly can. You can, I mean, I'm barely touching the strings, and that's enough. You can increase your volume by moving your hand faster, but you never want to dig into the strings, because it sounds bad, it'll cause you to drop your pick, and it makes it extremely hard when you come back up on the upstroke. So when we strum, what everybody starts out doing, and I'm holding a D chord for anybody who cares, the first thing you always learn are quarter notes. So a quarter note is one note, a quarter note in 4/4 time has 4 notes in each measure. And so a measure of the D chord would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, when you start getting a little more advanced, you do what are called 8th notes. So instead of just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have an and in between each of them. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this on the video, but when I am strumming, when I go down, I have the pick turned at an angle upward, so it's pointing up at my face a little bit. And that allows you to hit the strings without digging. So when you come back up, a lot of people have a ton of trouble with the upstroke, and the reason why is that they have the pick perpendicular to the strings the whole time, and that's really hard to do, or they have it turned upward, which is sort of a natural way to do it, and then when they try to go back up again, they catch on the highest string, the one that's furthest away from you, and it just bounces off. So instead, what you need to do is strum down, and on the bottom you turn so that the pick is addressing the strings in the same way on the upward as it does in the downward. And this takes a lot of getting used to, and you have to literally just pay very close attention to it so that you start strumming like that all the time. So again, when you're strumming, it's the lightest possible thing, and you're turning your hand to make that possible. Also on the upstroke, don't worry too much if you don't hit every single string in the chord. As you probably know, different chords involve different strings. Like a G chord involves all 6 strings. The A chord involves the highest 5 strings, which confusingly in guitar means the 5 strings that are furthest away from you. And then a D chord involves only the highest 4 strings. On the downstroke, you should be as precise as you possibly can, and eventually very, very precise about what strings you hit. In particular, you want to make sure that you hit the right bass note, and the bass note is typically the lowest note in the chord that you're playing. So in the D chord, it's the D string, not surprisingly, and that's where the chords generally get their name, from their bass note. And it's the, what we call the 4th string, which is the 3rd string down from you. And you only want to play those 4 strings. If occasionally you hit the A string in the D chord, it's not that big of a deal, because A is part of the D chord. It's repeated down in these higher strings. But if you hit the E string, I think everybody can hear that that's a discordant sound, because E is not part of your normal D chord. But in any event, when you strum, on the way down, you really want to hit every string. If you don't, you're not going to have a complete chord, and not hearing that bass note, which is generally the lowest string, and therefore the hardest to get precisely, unless you're playing all 6 strings on some chords. But on the way up, if you never make it back up to the bass note, nobody will ever notice. And it's actually better to be playing lightly enough that either sometimes you miss the strings entirely, or that you miss some strings, particularly on the way back up. It's better to do that than to dig in and try and get every string as you play. So that's just a beginning lesson. Mainly it's reminders for my students, but it's some stuff, some of which I knew when I tried very recently to really focus in and become a better player and more precise in my playing, and some of which I discovered as I was trying to recover from this injury where I had the arthritis here, and to pick up guitar after a long absence. So I hope that's helpful. In the next video, I'm going to cover the song that we're working on, which is the Glee version of Forever Young, and it will apply many, if not all, of the techniques that I just discussed. Good luck.